Hi, my name is Josh Snowden Poole. Just started my graduate program in sports management at Long Beach State, and I'm here with Jacob Frank of the NFL, National Football League. Hi, Jacob. How's it going?
It's good, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Would you be able to provide a brief summary of your current role and responsibilities with what you do?
Sure. So I work at the National Football League headquarters in New York City. I'm the senior manager of our collectively bargained programs. I work in a department called the NFL Management Council. The NFL Management Council serves as essentially the bargaining arm between our 32 clubs and our colleagues at the NFL Players Association, our union. So the scope of my responsibilities are quite broad. I oversee the day-to-day administration of our collectively bargained player benefit plans. So these are benefit plans that have been negotiated and are in the collective bargaining agreement. They span everything from a 401k to a pension to our NFL player insurance plan, which includes the medical, dental, and health benefits for our active players as well as our former players. And I also am heavily involved in our collectively bargained COVID protocols. So I serve as a member of the NFL's internal COVID task force, and I oversee much of the day-to-day administration of the league-wide testing program, as well as our contact tracing program when we have positive cases. So a pretty large scope of responsibilities, but it's a good time.
Awesome. And would you be able to elaborate slightly on that, the COVID process and how that's going to look for you guys coming up in the next season?
Yeah, so it's a good question. Last season, obviously, was our first time having to establish a COVID task force. It's made up of multiple individuals from a variety of different departments. My group, the Management Council, we serve as a representative on the task force as a result of negotiating many of the protocols that have to be abided by our players, coaches, and staff. Our colleagues from our player health and safety department, as well as our football operations department. And then we have external epidemiologists and medical experts that advise us. And so our group works hand in hand together to execute the testing requirements. So our unvaccinated players have to test daily. They do something called a PCR test, which is a nasal swab. We get those results within 24 hours. Our vaccinated, fully vaccinated players and staff have to test once every 14 days. So we oversee the administration of that with our partners over at BioReference. I also serve as one of our leads on our contact tracing efforts. And so when we have a positive case at one of our clubs, one of us will serve as the league's representative for a contact trace. And so we'll sit on a contact trace with that player or staff, as well as the infection control officer, head athletic trainer, and go through all those individuals' contacts and assess where to go from there and assess who is considered what we refer to as a high risk close contact or an extra scrutiny contact. So we're taking much of the learnings, many of the protocols that we established last season, we're moving them over into the 2021 season with a few tweaks as a result of many of our teams becoming fully vaccinated. So a little bit different this year.
Awesome. And so will that process be pretty adaptable throughout the season, depending on how COVID is throughout America and the world in general?
Yeah, we're a very nimble group of individuals. And so we had a series of scenarios last season where we had what we refer to as outbreaks amongst some of our teams that required games not to be canceled, but they were postponed so we could work through the contact tracing efforts and make sure that the teams were good to go prior to allowing them onto the field. So we had to be adaptable last season. We amended our protocols as we went. We changed the frequency of our testing requirements as we went. We changed many of the requirements that clubs had to abide by inside of the club facilities, on a team plane, on a team bus, in team hotels, at the stadium. So much of that will remain the same for the 2021 season. But as the Delta variant and other COVID variants change, and as the vaccination numbers continue to increase, we will certainly have changes to our collectively bargained protocols.
Awesome. Well, that's a very advanced process, so I commend you on your efforts. What are some key lessons that you've learned while working in sports throughout your career where you started to where you are now?
Yeah, so this is going into my ninth season at the NFL. I've had the privilege of working in a couple of different departments. I started out in our communications department, and then I worked in our player health and safety group for a couple of years before moving into the management council. So I've been exposed to a number of different areas within the NFL as well as with our teams. And I've learned a couple of things as a result of working in different capacities. One is you have to be very amenable to change. You have to be very adaptable. You have to have a great sense of responsibility and passion, as well as integrity. And to be a self-starter. Lots of times we're moving at a very, very fast pace. There are not a lot of times to seek guidance, and you have to know how to initiate a project, or have to know how to initiate a task. And those are qualities that I've learned to adapt over the course of my career at the NFL. A couple more that are incredibly important that I look for in people that I hire onto my team or I look to work for is you have to be reliable, you have to be accountable, and especially in our business, you have to be accessible. In the COVID world, it moves 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we are oftentimes, I'm based in New York, but I'm dealing with our teams that are out in the Pacific time zone, whether that's midnight because it's only 9 p.m. for them, or back on the East Coast dealing with our teams who are reporting in for testing or for morning workouts at 6, 7, 8 a.m. and they have questions.
Okay. So you've got a lot to do then. Busy man. So that kind of going off that then, what are some of the traits and skills that if you were hiring, or for all us graduates who are looking to pursue a career in sports, what are some of the traits, the characteristics that you would say are very important or that you seek for?
Yeah, I look for a couple of different things when I'm hiring people onto my team. One is to be a good communicator, both orally and via hand or via written communication. It's very important in our line of business to be able to clearly articulate the task at hand, the goal at hand, the initiative at hand, or to help our colleagues either at the NFL League office or one of our teams or even at the Players Association to help them navigate through an issue or challenge that they're having, or even to answer their questions in a very clear and concise manner. As it relates to written communication, it's very important to be a good writer. A lot of the work we do needs to be clearly articulated to our teams or to our players, to our coaches, to our staff, to our external advisors. So it's very important to be able to clearly write something and to put it into a way in which it is understandable. A lot of us refer or use words that are football jargon, and sometimes our external advisors or consultants don't necessarily know the football type words that we'd like to refer to. So it's important to be able to amend those or adapt those words to accommodate everybody.
Awesome. And so in terms of career exploration and preparation steps, what is some advice that you would give to graduate students or even students that are just looking for a career in sports in general?
Yeah, as it relates to preparation, to get into sports at least, I did a couple of different things. They worked for me. So I like to suggest these to others, is to not be shy about any opportunity that comes your way. Absolutely anything. I'll tell you, one of my first roles at the NFL, I really wanted to be in the NFL. I really wanted to work in football, and I was fortunate to get in through a communications internship. But a huge chunk of those responsibilities was actually serving as an administrative assistant to one of our executives in the department at the time. And I really wanted to come in and just work in communications and work in public relations. I didn't really think I should be an administrative assistant, but I learned a lot. You learn a lot about how to communicate with senior executives because you're answering the phone, you're responding to phone calls, to voicemails, you're providing written responses on behalf of the executive. I learned a lot about time management and juggling a lot of different balls in the air because you're managing a calendar for a very senior person. I also learned how to work with executives and understand their portfolio and the individuals that they work with and some of the do's and don'ts as it relates to the industry. There was also an opportunity in communications to at the time, several years ago, I did something called the news clips. And those are news clips that are sent around. They're essentially headlines of articles related to the NFL sent around to the company at a very early hour of the morning. And I volunteered to be one of those individuals to compile those news clips, put it together so I could circulate it around to our colleagues.
Awesome. So would you say that this is an individual question actually, would you say how important is networking for someone who is trying to get in the industry? Because so far I've been at this Long Beach State program, and the number one thing that I can remember them saying is network. How did you network, and how important is that in order to get into the sporting industry?
Yeah, I got into the NFL candidly by somewhat of sheer dumb luck. Going into my senior year of college, I knew the NFL had a summer internship program. I blindly applied at the time. I didn't know anybody. Granted, I did do internships in college to obtain that understanding of the industry and that background, but the NFL was lucky. I applied and went through the interview process and fortunately received an opportunity. But once I got into the building, once I got into league headquarters, I've spent all of my 9 years meeting as many people as possible.
Yeah.
That includes people within our office, because a lot of people come from the outside. They have prior experience before they move into the league office. So I've tried to develop as many relationships as I can within our four walls. I've tried to establish many relationships across the league in general, whether that's our coaches, our players even, or our staff at the clubs. I've met many individuals such as our game day assistants who serve in a game day only capacity on the sideline, and even our referees. And most importantly, in my role, at least, we have an opportunity to work with a lot of external advisors and consultants. And so I've spent a lot of time getting to know them and making an effort to network with them. So when the time comes and I need to tap that relationship, I have it within our four walls of the league office, as well as at our 32 teams, and then a little bit on the outside. So it's very, very important, and one that everyone should take advantage of once you obtain that opportunity.
100%. And would you better highlight one or two things from your sporting career or sporting industry career that has basically highlighted the biggest highlights for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the biggest highlight for me in my career so far was the Super Bowl last year in Tampa, Florida. What we referred to as the pandemic Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It was a grueling season last year. We established our testing program in July of 2020, and we made it to the Super Bowl, having not canceled a single game, having not had to add a single week to the NFL schedule. We had to postpone a few games. We had to just adjust the dates accordingly. They still got played, but we played all 256 regular season games right on time, and we finished the season right on time. And it was an incredible team effort amongst our COVID task force and a lot of other individuals, specifically our colleagues of the 32 teams, put their blood, sweat, and tears into the season. But it was incredibly rewarding to be able to go to the Super Bowl last year and see the ball get kicked off and know that we have successfully administered a league-wide testing program, contact tracing program, collectively bargained protocols that were followed to a T, that allowed us to get to the Super Bowl and literally finish the season on the exact day and the exact time in which we had set out to do back in July. So that was one of the best moments of my NFL career.
100%. It must have been extremely rewarding given the whole process that went around. Last question for you would be how much did your work, the amount of work that you had to do, go up when COVID hit? Or did they bring in new employees to cover that? Or was that just kind of added on to the current employees' plates?
It was added on to our plates. It happened so rapidly that we had to just be amenable to change immediately. We had almost no time to waste in establishing our team of individuals that would work on COVID. My opportunity to get involved came by virtue of having previously worked in our player health and safety department.
Right.
And so as a result of being a member of the management council and having been exposed to some of the negotiations as it relates to the COVID protocols, and then having been involved in our player health and safety department for almost 3 years, I was tapped to move into the task force and take on some additional responsibilities. Same thing happened with a few other people who have had exposure to our football operations department or who had been in the management council and it's since moved on to another opportunity at league headquarters. So all of us were brought together to work with one another and essentially administer all of the protocols and work very, very closely with our 32 teams, as well as our external advisors. I wish I could say that we brought on additional staff. We just didn't have the time to do so. A lot of us had to sacrifice quite a bit. We met daily for 5 months, all of us on the task force. Every single morning we would hop on Zoom and get together and review the day's cases and review the protocols and review any adjustments that needed to be made. I mean, this included getting together on Thanksgiving morning, Christmas morning, New Year's Day morning. We were one big, very close family by the time the season was over.
That explains why it was so rewarding for sure. I actually have one more question, and that was, how many people do you work with directly within the facility or within the NFL?
I have a lot of different contacts across the board. Within the NFL, I work with just a multitude of different departments. That's our finance department. That includes our health and safety, our football operations, our communications, even our player affairs department, our player operations department, our legal department. So there's just a wide scope of individuals that I work with on a daily basis, not necessarily on COVID, but even on our collectively bargained player benefit plans. And then outside of the league office, we work with a whole slew of individuals at our 32 clubs. We interact with our coaches, we interact with the players, we interact heavily with the medical staff. So that includes player performance directors, head athletic trainers, associate athletic trainers, infection control officers, COVID protocol coordinators. So there's a wide scope of individuals that at least touch my portfolio of work that I have the opportunity to work with every day.
Awesome. Well, we thank you very much for coming on, Jacob. Appreciate it a lot. It's been very informative and well done on everything you have achieved in the 9 seasons and also in the last season in particular. So thank you very much for coming on, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh. It was great to be here.
Awesome.